Hello, welcome to the Harvard Light. This is Mary. I give a conservative take about the world around me. Feedback is immensely important. Feel free to reach out to me. 2 ways to do this: email and YouTube. And also, not auditorily, you can hear my ad and my voice about the Harvard Light. So this is going on through different streaming platforms. For instance, the big hitters, Pandora, Spotify, Pandora, XM, Sirius, there's, being assorted issues with it. There's still a wheelhouse there out in the broadcast arena. And if I'm not mistaken, iHeart and so forth. So, listen for it. And also, it won't be hard to find me because I'm on a lot of different platforms and that too. All right, so it's Friday, so I'm focusing in on all of you. So the topic of choice is German literature. Here we go.
Im flachen Wald, Bücher aus dem Land der Sterne. Die Worte schweben sanft und kalt, Geschichten, die in Herzen färben. Regentropfen flüstern leise von fremden Ländern und Heldentum. Durch Märchenland auf Folgenreise verliert sich niemand im Alltagsrum. Regentropfen flüstern leise von fremden Ländern und Heldentum. Durch Märchenland auf Folgenreise.
Alright, so this week what I'm going to do is, as I always do, I focus in on the earlier aspects of the country of literature of choice, which is German. And then next week I'm going to follow up with the modern aspects of the literature. Welcome, and what did I say? Thank you, and all of this with some of the German greetings that I understand. And I don't even know, I'm not quite sure what Dankeschön means, but it's quite interesting with that song, taking off like gangbusters back in the day here. Anyhow, Germany, the history of Germany, though it's riddled with a lot of, unfortunately, in the modern century, when we're getting on with a lot of bad history, there's so much rich tapestry that is interwoven into the German culture. Now, as I mentioned, as I could continue to mention and continue to reiterate, literature is the cornerstone for bringing up ideas and really getting into the roadmap about what the culture is speaking about and addressing and getting to. And I'm going to speak briefly on this because I'm going to be very concise in getting to the point here. And then I'm going to go into a lot of depth on next week because when we talk about Germany from the literary point of view, it has been a lot of contributions that has been given with the German culture here. And there been a lot of transition and a lot of historical aspects about it. For instance, religious in itself and the aspects of the printing press and how that transformed the idea of how people think about themselves and their position with religion versus being secular and all of this. There's a lot of German foundation in that and so forth. So with this said, here's a brief overview or a brief cap here about the earlier works of German literature. Okay? I would say, Alright, so German literature has a fate of discontinuity and fragmentation. So this is because, and this is by Medium, the source that I'm reading from. Now, I don't particularly agree with some of the things that they focus on, but they have, again, it being balanced here, and giving what they think and giving my opinion. And so this gets the idea of being nuanced and melting it out and getting to a better position when it comes to not being so polarized or being in a bubble here. All right, so I'll be right back. Excuse me. All right, so I'll rehash this again. I have recorded outside before, and so we have chickens. So you hear chickens in the background. That's what's going on here. All right, so bear with it, if please. All right, so let me say this again. I lost mine. So this is because Germany's development prior to the country's formation is marked by war, religion, turmoil, and periods of economic decline. As a result, Germany's literature has experienced 3 periods of greatness, the contrast to England and France, which enjoyed one large period from the Middle Ages to the modern era. Now, the 3 periods of German literature greatness are the High Middle Ages, which is from 1160 to 1230, and the turn of the 18th and 19th century, the Age of Gulf, and the turn of the 19th and the 20th century, which I will reiterate and focus on next week. All right, so the earliest German literature work are epic, heroic, and mythological poetry from the 13th century, and the early previous generations of the Germanic tribes had relied on the oral culture. So much information had been lost because oral traditions passing down, reiterating renditions. That's gonna get lost because that all of that account is in your memory. So it's quite natural. Alright, so amongst these poetries were the Norse epic poem, which was a poem about the prince Siegfried, and many poems of the hero Theodoric, and other remains, including the Hildebrandslid. Is a 67-line fragment of a song depicting the tragic clash between the warrior Hildebrand and his son. So when the people converted to Christianity, one of the challenges was educating people with no written tradition. So the earliest attempt is a 4th century Bible translation done by the Bishop Euphalius. He also seems to have invented the Gothic alphabet as he wrote the translation. Now, the aftermath of the 30 Years' War from 1618 to 1648. Now, this literary institution in Habsburg and Nuremberg and other cities worked to develop the German language. Now, the most influential of these schools was the Sicilian school. Now, Romanticism was initiated in Germany by the 18th century. So by the Frederick brothers, H.W. von Skolgli, and novelists. So the novel also appeared for the first time as a prose tale, often dealing with supernatural elements. And so, Romanticism, the literary aspects of it, is quite interesting to me because it's like it was a gateway to lead into maybe it might be a bit far-fetched, but then you all reach out to me and give me what you think about it. But I'm just simply mirroring from my point of view about it. Gateway to goth and American goth and so forth. Now, why do I merge these bridges together? Because in romanticism, for the most part, from my take of it, it deals with the aspects of having an idealistic viewpoint about something, but in this case, most of the time it has to do with interpersonal relationships, right? And so does, for the most part, when you get into goth and American goth, it has to do a lot with interpersonal relationships, but it's more delving deep into the cracks or the cesspools, you can say, of society. When you get into that, genre for the most part, and people fighting against something that's, either evil or morally unjust, and trying to either not succumb to it or succumb to it, and coming over it's a whole thing with that, right? But romanticism is more like a internalized, neatly, not always neatly, but an internalized loathing that is really can get messy and can get blown and can get dark and loathing, because it has to do with the aspects of how to specifically get that right when it comes to the ideas of love. All right, so let's move on here. It says poets such as Ludwig Tieck and Clemens Brentano and Joachim von Armin wrote early romantic poetry. Now, I'm going to stop here and wrap everything up. So, by the time the 19th century rolled about, the literary movement known as the Young Germany, led by Karl Braun and Heinrich Heine, looked to erode German political opinions. Now, they turned from romanticism to more sober realism. Now, the theory of naturalism also contributed to the realism represented by German Hatterman. And it's also, I'm going to end on this. Now, naturalism is really something. It's, at most part, which is, I don't know, y'all feel free to reach out to me and, give your thoughts, or, talk about, and maybe possibly you had this experience, if y'all went to college or what have you, or in high school or what have you. So when I was, in my earlier part of college, I don't know, you know how you have the assorted things that you take for pretty much is BS classes, pretty much elective classes that you do throughout your primary school years in middle school, high school, right? And so I chose to take literary analysis or whatever, and American lit and European lit or something, whatever, right? And so, I'm simply just giving a broad-based opinion, because that's just how I viewed it. The naturalism, you danged if you do, you danged if you don't. And the professor's like, that's a little bit crass there, It's like, well, I mean, what's the point of having a conversation about it if you don't want to hear, different viewpoints? And it's, anyway. So, with that said, with it being convoluted, unfortunately, looking at it from a now it's not always like this. It's not always the case in college. There are some really great professors out there, so I'm not trying to bash here about the aspects of college, and when it's done right, it is very vital. Yeah, but it's just it's unfortunate because that's not the way that it's presented a lot in the case and here in American culture. But anyhow, so naturalism at the root of it is all about this whole type of Darwinism, which Darwinism is in itself has been widely discredited and all this crap about the survival of the fittest. And it's quite interesting how it started out in France and it worked its way and it just seeped everywhere. And then Germany taking on the tactics of it. And it's quite interesting that Germany took on the tactics of naturalism right in the 19th century before you get into the 20th century, and how that shaped the aspects of different things coming to be in the 20th century. And so when you come out in the 19th century with this sort of idea that, oh, there's always something against you, you could see how that led to the roadmap of the 20th century, which I will get into and talk about. Not only that, what happened, unfortunately, with the aspects of World War II. But I don't know, it makes a whole lot of sense. It's like, there are warning signs here, right? You can say that for a lot of stuff, but that's quite interesting that this was specifically sped out and talked about right here. All right, with that said, I'm going to end, and I'm going to go into a great deal of depth, and I look forward to talking about the 20th century in dramatic literary of the 20th century. Let's say that 3 times fast here on next week. All right, so this reaches the end of the Harboring Light. Tune in, turn up, and absolutely take care. Bye-bye for now.